About that time. Alright, so what's going on, guys? So as I kind of alluded to in the intro, I'm finally about to start the turbo build for the Galant. Seems like it's been a long time coming, but I've had this car almost a year now. It's kind of crazy to believe that. I'm really ready to get started, but there's a few things we got to take care of first. So this box. That's right. A new clutch, a new to me clutch anyway. This is a Spec Stage 2. Initially my plan was to just make around 200 horsepower boosted, and which a stock replacement clutch would be just fine. But I really should have listened to Trey. Much as I hate to say that, because I went out one night, once everything kind of opened back up, went out to a car meet. Needless to say, stuff happened. And now I'm convinced that I'm going to need more power, because 200 horsepower is just not going to do it, especially with all the work that I've actually put into this. So it kind of makes sense just to go ahead, upgrade the clutch while I'm at it. So I'm not going to really cover that too much in detail, because I kind of already did it in my 5-speed swap video. But it's pretty simple to swap out a clutch. You just drop the transmission, you know, pull the clutch plate off of the clutch plate and disc off of the flywheel, and bam, there you have it. But I'm actually not going to be doing it that way. I'm actually going to be pulling the entire engine out of the car. Why? Of course, it's not necessary to do that. I think I've already showed you that. So why am I pulling the engine out of the car? Well, up here in this tote right here, it's something you guys saw me pull at the junkyard. I did finally score the engine harness and the interior harness for a 3G Eclipse manual. And now what that does, and the reason I'm excited about that, I'm going to go ahead and use that, is for a few reasons. For one, it eliminates this. Now I'll cover this a little bit later, but this is that jumper harness that converts the auto ECU to the manual. There's a lot of things I could have done better. This is actually my second version of this, and I really wasn't happy with how it went. And this thing took several hours to make. But yet I was able to pull both harnesses and the dash and a few other things out of that car in about 3 hours. This took longer than that. And of course, this way, if everything goes well, I shouldn't have any check engine lights. Everything should work. And this way I'll be able to hook up my Tatrix DSM link, Evo link, excuse me, cable straight to the ECU. And it'll even be almost a direct swap with the Evo 8 ECU that I already have. The Eclipse ECU always has less wires, which I'll go over here in a second. The Eclipse harness actually includes a knock sensor, which will help with the tuning. And just a few other reasons I really wanted to swap over that harness. So I know it looks intimidating, but it's really pretty simple. As far as the engine bay wise, the Eclipse and the Galant are pretty much exactly the same. So you just start in one point and just work your way around. So with that said, if I have to install a new harness, that means I have to take off the dash. If I have to take off the dash, I might as well replace this cracked up dash I have with the new uncracked dash. And if I'm going to install the dash, I might as well go ahead and wrap it before I put it in. It doesn't really make sense to do that stuff separately. So of course, up until this point, I was kind of doing things just for informational purposes, kind of documenting my journey. And I wanted some other people to kind of see what the steps were. If I could do it all again, I would probably just do this from the beginning. Just strip the Eclipse parks car head completely of the harness and everything. You know, go ahead and pull the dash, upgrade the clutch, and yada yada. But here we are now, so many months later. I'm about to finally turbo this thing. Like I said, before I do that, I got to take care of a few things. So with that said, of course, thank you guys for following my build. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, and let's get started. The engine harness, the jumper harness, is actually pretty simple in concept. I just did some research. I found these pins, and these are basically, this is the Galant pin, and this corresponding Evo pin, / Eclipse, because the Evo and the Eclipse are pretty much the same. And you just go and you connect one pin to the other. Put some solder on the tip of each one of these pins that actually straightened out. So here's another one, like just kind of give you guys a better visual. So this is what I started with. I cut this board off. You just trim these plastic pieces and it'll pull off and grind these off. And then I straightened all these pins here. Now if you're doing this, depending on what time of year you're doing it, I definitely recommend that this be warm, because these can be very brittle and you really don't want to break this. What happened here, if you see what says broke, is while I was straightening them, I actually broke one, and that happened to be for one of the injectors. So I was going to have to do it over. And then I went, I think I have a clip of this, if so I'll put it in. If not, you just have to bear with me. Some solder on the tip of each one of these pins, and then I soldered one of these wires to each pin. The reason I use different colors is because I thought it would help me in determining which pin was which. I went the same pattern all the way around. In the end, it really didn't help that much or at all. So with that said, there's a lot of wires on the Galant ECU that aren't hooked up, and that's because the Galant has about like 30 or 40 more pins than what the Evo does. So if I were to do this again, what I would do, and what I recommend that you do, is start on the Evo side and just go plug by plug, and just go one plug at a time and connect it to the Galant ECU. And it should go a little bit quicker, because I wasted a bunch of time soldering all these wires and heat shrinking them just to not actually use them. And of course, I was gonna start working on another one, which is why I got this, because I wasn't having any luck at the junkyard. I think I've only found about 3 4-cylinder manual Eclipses out of the like dozen or so times that I've been to the junkyard. I just haven't had much luck finding these manuals. But I just happened to go one morning. I was able to find that car, strip it, and now I'm definitely more excited to go that route. Like I said, I'm just gonna set this to the side. Probably won't be doing anything else with it for now. I might even trash it. I'll definitely keep these connectors here. So I might sell these, might keep them for whatever reason. Anyway, and to remove these engines is actually pretty simple. There's a cross member below the car. It has 2 bolts in the front, 3 in the back, and then there's an engine mount that has 1 going through it right up front. Other than that, then there's 3 engine mounts on each side, and then in the back, you take those out, and of course, assuming you've unplugged everything, and you'll be able to drop the engine. Like, so I'm gonna start working on that, get ready to pull this thing out. If I mentioned in my other video about my gauge setup, this is, I think, an autometer gauge pod, and I actually like the functionality of it. Again, you can put it anywhere, but it actually came with the gauge, so I didn't buy this myself. And I have my, of course, my oil pressure gauge up here on the steering wheel, because I got my boost and my air fuel ratio, and these are actually just PVC pipe. So now when I'm sitting, let's see if I can get the best view. When I'm sitting in the driver's seat, this is kind of what I'm seeing. So if you're really paying attention, you'll notice that my gauges are actually not centered, and I actually did that on purpose because I didn't want to block off too much of the cluster. So now if you look, and this is again pretty much what I'm looking at, it's only blocking off a little bit of my temperature gauge and up to like 1500 RPMs, and I can see everything else. And of course up to like, you know, what's that, 10, 15 miles an hour. I can't see that, but it's blocking up very little. And of course I can adjust these. Now this will be coming out. Now, of course, this piece will be coming out as well, because I have the black piece from the Eclipse, and it actually fits on this car as well. So I'm going to swap this over. And like I said in my interior video, I would rather use these black pieces from the Eclipse, because unlike a painted piece, I don't have to worry about this chipping. It just makes it a lot easier, especially considering that these pieces, these trim pieces, don't cost but, you know, like $3 at the junkyard, like $2 or $3. So they're definitely worth it. They cost less than a candle spray paint, and they'll be way more durable in the long run. Sketchy. That's better. All right, so I got the car up in the air. Just as an extra precaution, it's something I always do, is put the tires underneath the car. That way, if by chance the jack stands, in this case, these Harbor Freight jack stands fail, and my Harbor Freight floor jack fails, there's still something to keep the car off the ground and off of me if I happen to be under it. Like, but since that recall came out and I started seeing the results, I've kind of been hesitant to use these jack stands. I've actually been using my taller, like, Craftsman jack stands. Little extra precaution here. Like, this is the first time I've actually used these since that recall. I've been using my Craftsman ones. Like, in all honesty, I have a blue set that have been around for a while, no problems. And this gray set that I've done all my work on since I moved to this house, and haven't had any problems with them. All right, guys, so I got the oil drain. I'm actually draining the coolant now. I'm gonna save it, because as you can probably see, it's pretty much new. I did just put this in there. So I'm gonna save as much of that coolant as possible. Of course, there's still gonna be some in the engine. Got the battery out, the battery tray, the intake. And once the coolant drains, I'm gonna start unplugging things. All right, guys, quick update. I did get the cross member out. I've got the harness, at least out of the way, and everything should be unhooked. So now the next step, of course, is gonna be the engine mount. I'm gonna do the one on the back first, then we're gonna lower the car and then undo these ones on the side. And if you can, pick you up one of these. This is just a magnetic tool. These things prove to be invaluable. All right, guys, so the engine's out. And don't worry about the floor. That's actually just water and a little bit of soap. So all in all, it came out pretty simply. But one thing, I did scratch my valve cover pretty bad here. I'm actually pretty upset about that. I guess, and I got it right here too, I guess I'll be having to repaint this thing a 3rd time. I think I'm gonna keep it silver though. Or maybe I'll go with blue. I don't know, we'll see. It's really not that big a deal, because there was some reaction, I guess, in the paint or clear coat. So it didn't look that great anyway, and I was already contemplating doing it again, just because I didn't like the way that looks at certain angles. It looks pretty bad. So maybe I do that again for one last time, but of course that'll be after I get the engine in. So of course now you can see what you have to work with. This engine bay is actually really big. Of course they do make a V6 version of this, so there has to be enough space to fit both engines. And then it's just gonna be a matter of washing this engine bay. I'm gonna go ahead and pressure wash it and pulling the engine harness out. So of course you have this harness here. That's what actually connects to the ECU. And you have this one here, which runs through the fender and then around, and then behind the dash. I'm not sure why they did it like that, but that's what it is. So that's what we're gonna tackle. I also think, and this will be in another video, I think I'm actually gonna move my gauges. I actually ran the wires from my gauges through the fender and they come out here. At the time I thought it was a good idea, but the more I think about it, I think, especially while I have everything clean, I'm gonna reroute them, come behind the dash and come out through here. That way I can kind of hide all the wires, because over here you can see them coming through this hole in the fender, and I just really didn't like where they were. Like, all right guys, so I made some decent progress on the Galant. It's funny because the really time-consuming part about turbo in your car is not actually installing the turbo kit on your car. There's a lot of other small things that you need to do, is what you're seeing me do, and kind of to prep for that. Like, but a good thing about this, a lot of stuff I'm doing is permanent. So for the life of the car, I won't have to worry about the harness. I won't have to worry about, you know, things like that. And I can just go forward with swapping out turbos, swapping out manifolds and injectors. So that's a good thing, but it is time consuming just to get there, and I wanted to just take you guys through that process and not just jump right into, you know, installing the turbo kit and kind of give you that false sense of what it's really like to do this. And of course, like I said, the harness isn't necessary, but it's the route I chose to go with. So anyway, thank you guys for watching the video. If you got this far and haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button. Make sure you share this with your fellow Galant and Eclipse enthusiasts. Make sure you leave any questions you might have down in the comments below. You have a great day.